Today in Plateau State is the final tribunal hearing where we will hear whether the governor of the state, Caleb Woodfan, is still the governor, or will the tribunal overturn the judgment. So quite a lot of, a little bit tension in the city, and then they tend to be a little roadblock. So if you're coming around Johnson City, you should know the route you will be using. And to citizens, we will employ to please stay calm, be peaceful, and let us just watch and listen to what the court have to say. The program is the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we will be looking at quite a number of stories on the paper. So you can do well to drop your comment on our Facebook or YouTube handle. And I'll be doing this together with Rachel Tanzi. Good morning.
Morning, Tele. I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank God it's Friday.
Thank God it's Friday.
Of course. So we'll go straight into the paper, starting with the Blueprint newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper, an FCT Wike revokes Obi, Agabi, Ekete, and 164 others plots. You can find more details on page 5. And in Edo, I'm loyal and battle Shaibu begs Obaseki. As 63-year-old mother of the nation, Information Minister extols Remi Tinubu. You can find more details on page 13. Amadi wins 100,000 US dollar NLNG prize for scientific work on newborn. The big story on the paper: Supreme Court drowning under overwhelming caseload. Tax 10th Assembly on amendment to the Constitution. Federal government working to swell apex court's rank, coming from AGF Fabemi. You can find more details on page 6. Tribunal judgment won't dampen my morale, coming from Kano governor. CBN postpones September 2023 MPC meeting. You can find more details on page 23, and I hope that when they finally have the meeting, we will not be seeing doubling up in the interest rate, because they assured us that as long as there's inflation, there will be an increase. Now, this doesn't feel like good news, so it's not really about being excited, because what if when they finally decide to have that meeting, we're seeing a double increase in the MPR? So I'm just hoping that this means good news rather than bad, or what we are speculating. Still on Blueprint newspaper, Naira volatility to persist, says Africa Foreign Exchange Monitor. You can find more details on page 22. And at the downside of the paper, Tinubu to UN, we won't allow rights advocacy stop Africa's reform. Urges global body to transform from talk shop to action center. Nigeria becoming important nation once again. A statement coming from Malagi. You can find more details on page 6. We have picture story where we can see Elumelu and Sanwo-Olu, the governor of Lagos State, and we can see another one with the president and the Minister of Information and National Orientation. And that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On a New Telegraph newspaper, we have quite a number of stories where we have at 600 Naira pump price. Federal government has returned the fuel subsidy. This is coming from Budget CEO. You can find more of the story inside the paper. Naira plunges to record 998 Naira to $1 at the parallel market. You can find that on page 25, and we can see that it seems both the fuel price and also the dollar to Naira is actually in a race. I do not know which we get to 1,000 Naira, but then our fingers are crossed as we see the unfolding of things. Still a New Telegraph newspaper, Nigeria has what it takes to overcome her challenges. This is coming from Abubakar. Also, we have Shaibu to Obaseki. I'm sorry, I miss you. We can still work together. This is what we hope to see. And we hope that they will come together and put their heads together to work so that the state will be better. Election petition should be resolved before inauguration. You can find more of the story inside the paper. And from the entertainment industry, on the issue of Mohbad, police are waiting the result after conducting autopsy. That happened yesterday, so you can do well to keep your fingers crossed and see what actually will unfold out of that story. The world will ignore Nigeria at its own pedigree, where we have says human rights advocacy shielding criminals. Continent won't accept mineral wealth scavengers. Is first African president to ring its closing bell. Assure investors of free movement of funds. You can find that big story on page 2 and 5. Kidnapped corps member will be released soon. This is a report coming from the NYC. We will record that there was a kidnapping of one of the corps members from Akwa Ibom and another we had on their way going to the camp over there in Sokoto. So we're seeing that they will be released soon. So you can keep your fingers crossed and read more of that story on page 4. Kano Street deserted, businesses paralyzed as curfew take effect. We will remember yesterday there was a curfew from Wednesday down to Thursday. And more detail of that story can be found on page 29. Soludo declares free nursery, primary, GS education in Anambra Public School. This is commendable. We hope to see other states also looking for a way to make education compulsory in these places and also sponsoring it as well. Amend Constitution retiring Supreme Court Justice Agu tells the National Assembly, say justices drowning in overwhelming caseload. Federal government expresses readiness to increase number of apex court justice. You can find on page 4. Tribunal affirms Mba's election, dismisses NYSC forgery petition. You can find that on page 2. They said that it did not give any criteria that you must have an NYSC certificate before you can actually, go for the office of the governor. So he has been affirmed as the governor of Enugu State. You can find more of that story inside the paper. We also have a study here that says tear gas exposure linked to reproductive health risks. I think it's important that we read that on page 26 and see how things can turn out to be better and how this is affecting the reproductive organ. And that's on the New Telegraph newspaper.
On Voice of Liberty, Nigeria loses $1.5 billion annually to malnutrition, a statement coming from Minister. U.S. District Court Bola Tinubu files emergency appeal to halt Chicago University from releasing records. We saw that yesterday on the paper. The court has given a rule in favor of Atiku that let Chicago University release the result of the president. And now we are seeing that the president has filed an emergency appeal to halt Chicago University from releasing his records. Fuel subsidy removal has increased poverty in Nigeria, a statement coming from Muslim leaders. The big story on the paper at UNGA, African nations will no longer accept oppression from powerful nations. This is a statement coming from the president. We have President Bola Tinubu asserted that African nations will no longer accept a situation in which human rights advocacy is used by wealthy and powerful nations to stop developing economies from dealing decisively with malign actors who illicitly siphon and smuggle out the continent's vast mineral resources. You can find more details of his statement inside the paper. NASDAQ closing bell ceremony, the greatest economy in Nigeria, Tinubu tells U.S. investors. And on insecurity, Voice of Nigeria journalist murdered in Zamfara. Still on Voice of Liberty, subsidy removal, Nigerians under strain from trilemma of high petrol, diesel, gas price. And this is a statement coming from stakeholders. And at the downside of the paper, we have Melekari secretly recruits 35 staff without NNPCL board approval. This is allegations coming from a source. You can find more details inside the paper, and that's all the news on Voice of Liberty.
On the Punch paper, we have federal government may pay 1.68 trillion naira fuel subsidy. Marketers forecast 900 naira to a litre. With the right of flowing that story, petrol price to rise again as naira nears 1,000 naira. Crude oil hit $95, Ipman warns. Operators commend government for subsidy proposal. CSO oppose fresh subsidy. So they tend to be back and forth. So you read more of that story on page 2. And on academic record, delay Atiku's request, Tinubu tells the U.S. court. Legal team seek review of ruling. Ex-VP aide alleges cover-up. You can find that story on page 22. Currency in circulation rises to 2.7 trillion naira. This is a report coming from the CBN. Also, we have pathologists conclude autopsy on Mohbad's corpse. Police await the result. You can find more inside the paper. I remain loyal, forgive me, Shaibu begs Obaseki. You can find on page 12. And on the cult clashes, relocate to Sagamo, Abiodun tells security heads because of the clashes they are having there. So you can do well to read more on page 4 and 5. And we have consumers alert sabotage as Greek collapse worsen outrage. You can find that on page 17. And that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, 2024 polls Shaibu begs Obaseki as Edo Central stakeholders kick against his ambition. Peter Obi, BUA, Julius Berger, others lose land in Abuja as Wike revokes 165 plots. Trade losses extend as investors lose 36 billion naira. The big story on the paper, illegal mining. Africa will no longer permit smuggling of weapons and mineral resources, a statement coming from Tinubu. Pledges to avoid rest until every Nigerian is lifted out of poverty, woos Nigerians in diaspora to return home. U.S. Deputy Treasury Secretary comments Tinubu, says Nigeria is proving to be a new frontier for investment. You can find more details on page 11. Police exhume body complete autopsy. You can find more details on page 3. This is still on the Mohbad case. Nigeria Eagle sale. AMCON MD disobey court order, breach procurement laws. Eric shareholders allege. Technology to keep newborn babies alive. Win 100,000 US dollar and LNG prize for science. Stakeholders applaud UBA chairman for youth empowerment, entrepreneurship development in Africa. And at the downside of the paper, Sagamu bloodshed, security operative arrests Ogun lawmaker who shielded cultists. You can find more details on page 3, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Daily Times newspaper, how litigation stall APCON debt recovery effort, with the writer 73% of top debtors in different courts. You can find more of the story inside the paper. Edo 2024 succession crisis. Obaseki chases deputy away, relocate office to private group. You can find that inside where we're having the right of following that story. The deputy governor now operates from his personal residence. No end in sight to saga. You can find that story inside the paper. LP Enugu Guba candidate to appeal tribunal verdict confirming Mba's victory. Security expert Lawrence CBN investigator Obasi. You can find that story on page 5. Lawyer gives Adeleke 10 days to settle judges' allowances or face legal action. You can find that on page 5 as well. And on banditry, 3 core members freed in Zamfara redeployed to FCT. This is coming from the NYSC. Traditional rulers, security agency, and others involved in push to release others. You can find more of that inside the paper. And I think we've said this over and over, Richard, the fact that it's very important that before a core member is being sent, they need to check the safety of this core member. We've said it here also, the fact that if there is a need for them to go to a part of the country, then we should make sure that that part of the country is safe, even though right now I do not know which Nigerian road is safe because they tend to have taken over almost every road. But then it is imperative. I mean, maybe you could also send security agency to accompany these core members when they get to camp, and they also accompany them when they get to their place of primary assignment. With that, we know that the lives of these students or the life of these core members are safe, and their parents can actually be relaxed in the fact that yes, my daughter or my son is serving in this particular part in the country, and then I'm sure that he or she is safe and nothing will happen. But we keep seeing each time you're about, even just from your home down to your place of work, parents are living with high blood pressure because they do not know what will happen eventually. So I think it's important that the government look into what they need to do, even though we're seeing like those who are being freed have been redeployed to the FCT. But what happen to those who are still living in quote and quote areas that are still not safe? What then happened to those people? So I hope that the government will look deeply into stories like this so we don't have a reputation over and over and over of such incidents coming up.
Because there is 101 ways that NYSC can make sure core members are safe on their way going. Giving an escort or having a mass transit on the road could be dangerous because we're putting the same group of people in the same place. However, in year out, we know when a certain batch is going to come. You know when a certain batch is going out of camp. If, for example, batch A is supposed to resume on the 25th of December when that is when they're supposed to appear in camp. You know that from the 20th to the 26th, we will be having corps members on transit. Now, what you need to do as officials of the NYC is to tighten security within these 5 days all over the country. Give reports out there, tell them that we are having corps members traveling all around countries, and these are corps members that are having their letters on the road. So even when, for example, a car is being stopped for checking, you should have security personnel asking questions. If these are corps members, you should just make sure that within this period of time that you know that people are leaving, this time there is massive traveling on the road, you should tighten the security. Let security operatives know. Speak to whatever body that you need to, and let them know that within this period of time we have corps members on the road shuffling to their place of service. Exactly. And the same thing after the camp, we have corps members that will be going back to their state, those who have been redeployed or those that want to go back home before going to their place of primary assignment. Within this period of days, you alert security agencies, let them tighten security on the major roads that you know corps members will be moving. These are some of the ways that you can ensure the safety of security. Let them double up the security for these days to make sure that these corps members reach their destination safely and they leave camp safely. There are many other ways that I believe NYSC can go about the safety of corps members, and I hope that they sit down, they deliberate, and plan exactly how to go about it.
Well, we just hope that
we hope so,
proactive measure, not just for corps members,
Not
but
just
then other people as
everybody.
well.
Yes.
And then we have a picture story where we can see a Blanchard International Day of Peace, which happened to be yesterday, where we saw that the First Lady actually rang the bell for the peace in the world. And then so you can do well to read more of that. Yesterday was the day, but then that didn't just stop yesterday. It's in a way to foster relationship, culture, and harmony, regardless of where you find yourself. Downside of the paper, we have Anambra lawyer father escapes death. You want to know what happened, you can do well to read that on page 5, and that's all on the Daily Times newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Shaibu's office at government have relocated. I'm sorry, Deputy Governor begs boss. You can find more details on page 5. 22 lawmakers okay move to impeach Ondo Deputy Governor. Bank raises 13 billion naira for subsidy paying palliative. And in Sagamu, police arrest Ogun lawmaker and 6 others. You can find more details on page 15. Former governors, firms, other lose choice land in Abuja, Obi, Agabi, Dariye, Moke, Doma, banks, construction firms, others on the list. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 4. Umba floors Idoga to retain seat in Enugu as governor. The big story on the Nation newspaper, Tinubu rules Nigerians in US to invest back home. Overcome setback, adopt new mindset, president advises. You can start with the details of his statement on the front page and continue on page 4. India suspends visa to Canadians. Bazoum asks ECOWAS court to free him. Poland opposes Germany on UN Security Council seat. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 5. At the downside of the paper, Soludo ends fee in Anambra schools. Senate seeks justice for Mohbad, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
I'm happy the president saying Nigerians in diaspora should invest back home. But I hope that Nigerians in the country are also investing in the country and not investing elsewhere. Because over the years, we've heard of people that are in the country, but basically their investment is not in the country. They invest outside the country. So in as much as the president is encouraging Nigerians abroad to invest back home, because that is the only way we can be able to make Nigeria to be stabilized again, I think it's also important that Nigerians at home will invest at home. And then we've been talking about the issue of always importing. Let us look into what we can do to export. And I'm happy you also highlighted the fact that Africans will no longer fold their arms and be marginalized by other people that will come into our country and steal resources. We've seen that over and over. Mineral resources keep going. Today we're yet to get artifacts that are not even in the country. So not even to talk about those that are buried, and then we have investors coming in disguise that they want to invest, and then they steal away our natural resources and then live with it. So we hope that when they come in, some of the minerals we we're having in the country. We'll have investors that will work within it. Let us see that we have people that can keep the resources back at home and they let us do things. You look at the likes of other countries and then you wonder, those are countries that were desert before, but they are well developed right now. It's because somebody somewhere realized that it's high time we invest in our country and do something. So I'm happy the president is saying this, and we hope that from this speech he has made there, we begin to see different approaches coming from Nigerians in diaspora, even Nigerians in the country, towards making Nigeria a better place and even making it a place where we have investors. But just like we say, there are things that need to be fixed if we want investment to actually work in the country. Quite a number of things, and we hope that they look into those things, and then when investors come in, they will find a place favorable to do business.
You know, Sele, you keep saying something how others do make money from those in diaspora just by leaving the country, and why is Nigeria not doing the same? I keep saying there are things that you don't need to woo people about. Just put down modalities in place that for whoever professional that is leaving the country, doctors, nurses, engineers, pilots, architects, and all of that leaving the country, lecturers, professors, every walk of life. Why don't you put in things in place that you don't even need to woo them? They are being in diaspora, you still get money out of them, because I remember you clearly saying there are countries that people do that you, even if you leave, there is still a way they get back from those who have decided to leave the country. So why are we not putting modalities in place? And you're sitting down and you just keep, it's almost like you're begging them to please invest in the country. No, do things that will not make it an option. When we see things, I'm looking forward to a country, Sarah, that when we see things that are beneficiary, when we see things that are mandatory, that will definitely enhance the growth of the country, we don't put it in the mercy of whether you want to or not. We don't make it an option of whether you choose or not, but we create a platform, we put things in place that just makes it compulsory in a simple and unique way, not like in a forceful way, but we put things in place that will automatically warrant things to flow in that kind of direction, rather than leaving it for people to decide whether or not they want to be a part of the growth in Nigeria. But we create a system that allows us to grow with or without people's opinion of wanting the growth or not. So yes, I'm looking forward to that kind of intelligence coming from the administration of this country and governance entirely. Yes.
Sure. Well, let's take a time out at this moment so we can open the phone lines and also hear what your thoughts are concerning any of the story that is of interest to you. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Network Television. We've been looking at quite a number of stories that are on the paper, from what the president is saying about Nigerians investing back at home, Nigerians in diaspora should invest back at home. And then we're beginning to see, and even the president is actually pushing that he's talking about the Chicago results should be put on the hold for now. So quite a number of back and forth on that, and also going down to Edo State, where we're saying that the deputy governor has pledged his loyalty again and apologizing to the governor. So you can do well to grab the paper and read any of the story that is of interest to you, and our number is displayed on your screen. Please do well to call us. We'd love to hear what you feel about any of the story, but please do remember to be civil with your language. Try and summarize your point in a minute, as other callers will also love to do just that. I still have Rachel Tenzi with me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, before the calls come in, let's go to the Guardian newspaper, starting with a big story on the Guardian. Nigeria loses 1 trillion naira yearly importing active pharmaceutical ingredients. And that's talking about the paradox of plenty. You can find that big story on page 4 and 5. And then let us see what we can do here, where we've seen that even NAFDAC have given the go-ahead for us to get some of those things that we need for making some of these pharmaceutical things back at home without us importing this ingredient, because we tend to be losing quite a huge amount of money. So I think we have all these things here if only we dig deeper. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and you can look up that story on page 4 and 5, just like I said. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we have Dangote. We have modular refineries abandon petrol refining over return of subsidy. You can find more on page 15, even though we are not certain whether the subsidy is returning or not. But then you can do well to read more of that on page 15. Tinubu files motion to stop Chicago Varsity from releasing academic records to Atiku. You can find that on page 2. Also on the monetary policy, meeting postponed as CBN faces a leadership vacuum. You can find that on page 3. We will remember that mostly it's the CBN governor that do head that meeting. But we think the postponement is as a result of the leadership vacuum. So we hope something will be done fast so they can actually review some of these policies. We have Ogun lawmaker, 6 others nap over Sagomu, called clash. You can find that story inside the paper. Despite Tinubu's assurance, U.S. issued travel advisory to citizens. You can find that on page 6. Finance Minister blames Naira dive on $6.8 billion overdue payments. You can find that story inside the paper as well. And that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Friday, leadership depleting number of justices overstretches Supreme Court. Justices now 11 as Amina Agu bows out. Calls for constitution review to free courts from undue hardship. You can find more details on page 4. And we have trend. Lagos police exhume Mohbad's body for autopsy. Naira devaluation pushes crypto transactions to $56.7 billion. You can find details of both stories on page 2. Shaibu surrenders, begs Obaseki for forgiveness. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 7. Calm returns as police leave 24-hour curfew in Kano State. Tinubu, first African leader to ring NASDAQ bell. Tribunal dismisses Labour Party petition, affirms Umba as Enugu governor. FCTA recovered 1.9 billion naira ground rent after weekends. Other more details can be found on page 13. That's all the news on Friday leadership.
On Daily Independent newspaper, Tinubu to UN, the world will ignore Nigeria at its own peril. Says until Nigerians have arisen out of poverty, we won't rest. Africans will no longer accept oppression from powerful nations. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Why presidency directed postponement of the NBC meeting. You can find more of why that happened. And Edo Deputy Governor Shaibu begs Obaseki for forgiveness. All the stories still on the front page of Daily Independent. We have no more accidental shooting by custom officers. The CGC Adeyiyi assures. You can find that on page 7. And NUJ urges investigation into the missing journalist found dead in Zamfara. You can find that story on page 7. Tinubu becomes first African leader to ring closing bell as NASDAQ. You can find that also on page 7. Federal government consider training fire safety personnel for banks, hotels, and others. Can lament resurgence of kidnapping banditry in Taraba State. You can find that story inside the paper. And tribunal verdict, victory for democracy, Enugu people, says Mba. We have some few writers following that story. And downside, we have Nigeria, other emerging market need $3 trillion annually to finance development goals. This is coming from the IMF. You can find that story on page 13. And that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On Vanguard, Nigeria's trade with Africa up 40.8% to 1.84 trillion naira. Shaibu apologizes to Obaseki over field 6 forgiveness. Non-development OBBUA Julius Berger Agabi orders lose Abuja lands as Wike revokes 167 plots. Tinubu to UN, I fought for democracy, determined to prove it can provide development. Fresh strike looms as NLC's ultimatum expires today. NLC leaders meet next week as federal government gets desperate to avert action. Police exhume Mohbad's body and conduct autopsy. We have a picture story where we can see the youth of Iju, Ashagba, Lagos State under other Ajayi local government embark on a peaceful protest for justice over the death of singer Mohbad. This happened yesterday in Lagos State. Still on Vanguard newspaper, again gunmen murder ASP inspector in Enugu police patrol ambush. Poor economy, insecurity, worrisome coming from Muslim leaders. Trivial cases like 12 burned goods were brought to the Supreme Court. A statement coming from Justice Agu, and you can find more details on page 9. And on kidnapped corps members, we are making effort to rescue remaining 5. This is an assurance coming from the Director General of NYSC. We have a column on page 17 by Awila Kemfa and then a sport column on page 31 concerning FIFA ranking Super Eagles to 40th now, meaning we are dropping in our ranks. And that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
On this day newspaper, Naira falls further to 995 Naira per dollar on parallel market. Edu blames $6.8 billion backlog for currency woes. We have the I&E Forex window record 239.54% surge in transaction volume. Uncertainty beclouds market as CBN postponed the NBC meeting indefinitely. More of that story can be found on page 5. Also, we have Obi Inki Tobi Omoke Kanu Agabi Samarabido affected as Wike revoke 165 plot of land in FCT. More of that can be found on page 8. Also, we have Tinubu to Guterres. I'm ready to take tough decisions even if they make me unpopular. We have some writers says declare Africa will no longer accept right advocacy violating our land and economics. Stress the need for UN to transit from talk shop to action coordinating center. Says he survived crippling poverty, and then the UN scribed Nigeria indispensable in West Africa. Nigeria indispensable in West Africa. You can find more of that story on page 5. Also, we have the big story following Tinubu's appeal. Judge adjourned the CSU record case to Monday. Temporary state execution of earlier order after president plead it will cause severe and irreparable harm to him. Tinubu departs New York en route Paris to Abuja, so he will be on his way back to the country. We wish him safety. We have the picture story here where we can see Remi Tinubu rings the bell for peace in the world. This is in recognition of the World Peace Day in New York yesterday, and that's all on this day newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, Tinubu becomes first ever African leader to ring closing bell at NAFDAC. Statement coming from the presidency assures investors of free movement of funds. American business is paying attention to the transformative reforms being implemented. Statement coming from Adeyemo. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 3. Agdeboruwa exonerate Akeredolu from move to impeach deputy. Naira free fall continues, inches toward 1,000 Naira to a dollar on street as dollar demand swells. Companies seeking forex for importation groans, anxiety over postponement of MPC meeting. More details can be found on page 2. Wike revokes 165 plots of land in Abuja. Davido's Lantern Falls order joint candlelight procession in Lagos for Mohbad. Tinubu files appeal to stop Chicago University from releasing academic records to Atiku. Still on the Matrix newspaper, I'm sorry Philip Shaibu begs Obaseki for forgiveness. CBN postponed September 2023 MPC meeting. Missing Zamfara journalist Hamisu found dead. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On Dailies newspaper, again, gunmen ambush police patrol, kill ASP inspector in Enugu State. With the rider, go after killers of your colleagues. IPOB tells security agency. You can find more of that on page 5. At the songbook presentation, Abdul Salami Atiku Obi Ozodema diplomat raised hope on new Nigeria. With the rider, ex-head of state says nation will emerge stronger from current challenges. Nigeria's history crucial to its future. This is coming from Niye Kalu. You can find that on page 6. Jubilation in Enugu as tribunal upholds Mbar's victory. We will appeal judgment, says the Labour Party and the PRP candidate. More of that can be found on page 22. And at the United Nations General Assembly 78, we need you back, Tinubu tells citizens in the US, says frustration caused by past leadership. Well, I hope we just handle what is happening rather than pushing blames on the reason why some people left. You can find more of that story on page 26. Also, we have sack of governor, military and others deployed to enforce curfew in Kano. Anxiety grips Plateau State as tribunal delivers judgment on governorship election today, which is presently taking place. You can find more of that on page 28. And on youth empowerment, UBA chair commended by distinguished leaders. You can find that on page 25. Also, we still have a picture story where we can see the ex-head of state with other people that were present during the Sun book presentation. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, questions persist over petrol subsidy. Federal government running quasi deregulation. A statement coming from Ipman. Crude oil price forex further impact diesel price. You can find more details on page 6. Tinubu woos investors in USA invest in Nigeria without fear, he says. Trial of HIV vaccine to start in South Africa and United States. Tinubu files emergency appeal against US court order to release of academic record. Coronation rites begin Monday for new Asayi. You can find more details on page 3. CBN postpones September NPC meeting indefinitely. Sagamu called clash, Ogun lawmaker 6 orders in DSS net. Edo Deputy Governor begs Obaseki for forgiveness, says I am missing my governor. Tribunal upholds Mba's victory as Enugu Governor Mutfwang knows fate today. You can find more details on page 12, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Alright, let's go to Nature, where we'll be looking at the Nature newspaper. Nature News launches Nature Fact-to-Fact Check Misinformation on Environment. You can find that story inside the paper. And on Anko Borrower Scheme, farmers lament losses from CBN loan scheme and flood disaster. AFAM blames the CBN for exacerbating food crisis in the country. You can find more of that story on page 3 of the Nature News. Also, we have here federal government NESG to collaborate for water sector advancement, coming from a prof, which you can find on page 11. And on the World Cleanup Day, NCF Total Energized Partner on cleanup tree planting in Surulere. You can find that on page 11. Nigeria will be a big global player in supply of critical minerals. Talking about coming from Alake, he said Nigeria will be a big global player in supply of critical minerals. You can find more of what he said on page 5. And coming from the African Development Bank, Africa is ideal location to manufacture electric vehicle batteries. You can find that on page 10. And also we have a Nature Care must have vitamins and minerals for longevity boost. So if you want to know what that implies, you can do well to read so you can know how you need all of these minerals to keep your body safe. And also we have Transcorp launches environmental CSR initiative to promote recycling and sustainable practices in Nigerian schools. More of that can be found on page 5, and that's all on Nature newspaper.
On Punch Sports Extra, we have Big Boys Cruise in Europa Group opener, where we can see Leverkusen having a 4-0 win, and we are seeing Servette and Prague having 2-0 win. We have Boniface scores assist in big win Ogbu on target as Czechs win away. Eagles drop to 40th in FIFA rankings. Osimhen back to return to scoring ways. Reds end comeback win, and by Reds we're talking about Liverpool winning 3-1. You can find more details on page 2. Porto sweat over Sanusi Fitness. The big story, Daniel and Yinuga exclusive. I am sure that I can be better than my father, and the truth is that he wants me to be better than him, and that is why he has been very supportive and he shares ideas with me. My life, my football. You can find more details on page 6. Ten Hag backs fumbling Onana. Ramsdale must fight for his place. A statement coming from Raya. The year link with La Liga return, and at the downside of the paper, Sociedad's Umar lament Inter draw. Chelsea planning £80 million wage cut. You can find more details on what it means for the players on page 4, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Well, I think that's how far we can go, Rachel. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome,
doing this.
Sally.
Thank you to our viewers, and also thank you to our supporters for always keeping a date with us on the dailies. Thank you to the crew members and every other person that make this program a success. Until we come your way again, please do remember to be peaceful and have a blessed weekend ahead.